Fox News Alert. I'm Ashley Strohmeyer live in New York. Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniya has been assassinated in Tehran, according to Iran's Parliamentary Revolutionary Guard. Iran gave no details on how Haniya was killed, and the Guard says the attack is under investigation. The 62-year-old was born in a refugee camp near Gaza City and joined Hamas in the late 1980s during the first Intifada or uprising. As Hamas grew in power, Haniya rose through the ranks. Reports of the assassination comes as fears of a wider conflict between Israel and Hezbollah grow. Earlier Tuesday, Israel claimed responsibility for a targeted strike in Beirut aimed at the Hezbollah commander responsible for a deadly attack in the Golan Heights that killed 12 children and teens. The IDF says the most senior Hezbollah military commander was killed in that strike. Now, for more insight, we're going to turn to Matt Shoemaker. He's a former intelligence officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency. Matt, thanks for jumping on with us tonight to talk about this. You know, with this Hamas political leader being killed, what does this mean for the war going forward, in your opinion?
Absolutely. No, thank you very much, Ashley, for having me on. This comes just about 12 hours or so at most from when the Israelis conducted another assassination against Hezbollah in the capital city of Lebanon, in Beirut, just earlier today. So for the Israelis to conduct both of these is absolutely astonishing, in my opinion. You know, being a former intelligence officer, seeing this kind of activity is really unprecedented from what I can tell. And on top of that, you know, you did a great summation in terms of what the leader of Hamas's background was. But one thing I think is really important in this entire discussion is that this happened today in Tehran on the same day that the new Iranian president was inaugurated in Tehran. So that is going to send an absolute message to the Iranians that the Israelis, number one, are not backing down, and number two, the way that this was conducted. If the reports are true that the Israelis launched an airstrike targeting the leader of Hamas in Tehran, rather than using more traditional means like sending an assassin in to just shoot the individual, that would be a much smaller sort of footprint rather than sending in an actual airstrike. So the Israelis are sending a message to the Iranians that they are not messing around. I will be absolutely astonished if the Iranians do not respond in some way. You know, if you remember back about 4 years ago or so, when the Americans under President Trump took out Soleimani in Baghdad in Iraq, the Iranians certainly responded by sending their own volley of missiles into Iraq. Now, the difference, of course, was it was not on their territory. It was not in their capital city. And so we're going to see what happens now. I think everyone is really just waiting with bated breath to see how the Iranians and their axis of resistance with Hezbollah and with Hamas reacts to the events of today.
Yeah, and Matt, I think we're still waiting for the Israelis to confirm they did this. I mean, this is not unusual for them to not, you know, announce this right away. But Israel has been saying they were going to kill this man. So if they did do this, they are following through with what they promised they were going to do. But the likelihood that we see, in your opinion, what's the likelihood that we see Hamas retaliating? Or is this Israel potentially just getting started?
More than likely, this would be the Israeli. Depending on how the reactions come from this could very well be the Israelis getting started. We've seen over the past number of months, at least going back 6 months right now, in terms of the Israelis conducting individualized assassinations, particularly, of course, in the Gaza Strip. To a lesser extent, only in the past few months with regards to in Lebanon against Hezbollah. For the Israelis to fire missiles into the heart of Tehran, into the Iranian capital city, and assassinate someone who was a guest of the newly installed Iranian president today of all days on his inauguration day. The Israelis certainly seem to feel comfortable with doing that to send a message to the new Iranian president. And that certainly puts the new Iranian president, at the very least, on the back foot. He's now, to a certain extent, backed into a corner because, he has to make the hard decision of how does he want to look. How does he want to be portrayed to the Ayatollah, and how does he want to look to the people of Iran of how he and the Ayatollah respond to this? Do they look weak and respond minimally to this, or do they feel that they need to respond harshly in order to look strong? So we're all just waiting to see how the Iranians are going to react to this.
Do you think it could signal a wider conflict with Hamas and Israel, or do you think this could potentially be kind of like the closing segment with this? I mean, if they're showing this much strength, especially on the day that you talk about it, the day that they chose to do this of all days, could this signal an end to this war sooner than later?
It is a high-risk, high-reward decision or choice that the Israelis have certainly made. I think that it would be unwise to assume that this is going to end things. I think that the Iranians in particular are certainly very concerned, historically speaking, with how their image is viewed across the Middle East. So for them to kind of just roll over and let this slide in such a public way, considering that the Israelis chose to do this in such a public way, if, as you mentioned, the Israelis were the ones that, in fact, actually did do this, for the Iranians to let this slide would certainly be unexpected. I certainly hope that my cynicism doesn't overtake me, but this is certainly not a good thing for peace in the region. The Iranians, I would expect them to respond forcefully, publicly, and if that means that they also coordinate with Hamas, with Hezbollah, and with the Houthis down in Yemen, that would certainly be very difficult, working across all those different vectors to try and protect Israel, let alone American troops that might get caught in the crossfire, who are in bases in Syria and Iraq. So this is certainly a powder keg, and it is an extraordinarily dangerous situation at this moment because of the events of the past 2 hours.
Right, and considering, he is Hamas's leader, if you're just not joining us, his name is Ismail Haniya. He was assassinated in Tehran. He is, like I said, he's been in this since the 1980s. Assuming there's someone there ready to take his place, how does that change Hamas and the way they operate, or does it?
Yeah, well, so one thing to keep in mind for sure is that the Israelis have been after this guy for the better part of almost 2 decades or so, and so he's had an intense grip over Hamas, especially in the Gaza Strip. There's been some problems that he had in terms of personality relationships with regards to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. And so there was a bit of a falling out a number of years ago between he and Mahmoud Abbas. And he himself has, engorged himself with regards to the wealth that he's just sucked out of Gaza and from the Gazan people. So we're going to have to sit tight and see who really takes the reins after this, if indeed there is a chosen successor that he might have, or if there's going to be a sort of jockeying of the underlings to try and come out on top of this and take charge of what might be left of Hamas. So, for this all to happen on a Tuesday night or so, this is it's going to make the intelligence community in the United States, when they wake up in the morning, certainly they're going to have a lot of work to do, and people are going to be working through the night, certainly at the White House and in the Defense Department.
And just to touch on that a little bit, how do you think the U.S. should respond to this?
So there are a couple different vectors for a response. The first one is going to have to be diplomatic. It's going to come out of the State Department, and it's going to require a relatively quick and extremely forceful response in terms of the verbiage that they use. And it's going to have to be threatening to a certain extent, especially towards the Iranians, that if they choose to escalate this situation, that very bad things will happen to them to the point where it will not be worth it for them to respond harshly. And from the other perspective, the military side of things, to put the iron in the glove, if you will, the Defense Department is going to have to work closely with state in order to make sure that we have assets close by, and that from my understanding, we currently do. We have a number of different naval ships in the Eastern Mediterranean that were initially going to be used to assist in any evacuations, out of Lebanon, but they might be used for different purposes now.
Right, and Matt, I got to let you go, but I do appreciate your time and your insight into all of this. Matt Shoemaker, former intelligence officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency, we appreciate it.